Welcome to Redeeming Stories, where we explore the sacred spaces between pain and healing and the beauty that can rise from the hardest parts of our stories. I'm your host, and today I'm sitting down with Juanita Ellingson from beautiful British Canada. Love that country. Juanita is a forgiveness and self-care empowerment coach who helps others find clarity, spiritual guidance, and deep release through the practice of true forgiveness. Juanita's journey began with her own experience of guilt, shame, and regret, and emotions that many of us carry, but rarely know how to let them go. She discovered that forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened, but rather reclaiming her own heart and what held it captive. So, in our time together today, we'll explore what forgiveness really means, how it can transform pain into peace, and how healing begins when we choose to release what no longer serves us. This is Redeeming Stories, and today let's step into this conversation, one rooted in grace, release, and the power of redemption. Juanita, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Julie. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm honored to be a part of your show.
Thank you. Do you mind sharing a bit about yourself?
Sure. Um, as Julie said, my name is Juanita Ellingson, and I have had a very long journey with forgiveness. It kind of began many years ago. I am a firstborn child. I am also a first grandchild. So there was a lot kind of right from the very beginning. I am a very proud mama of um she's almost 30 and she is my world traveler. I am happily married, and between both of us, we have three amazing adult kids and one grandchild. So, uh, I'm a happy girl, and it's taken a while to get here.
No, and I know, and I can feel that passion you have for your daughter. I think I share that passion. I have two adult daughters who are well into their 30s now and have been my world for decades, and now their husbands and my grandsons. So I completely understand. Oh, Juanita, can you, that moment of forgiveness, can you share with us a time when forgiveness first became real to you? Not just the idea, but as something that started to change your heart in your life.
That first moment was an absolute turning point. When I everybody has heard about forgiveness. Like, you go into any church, you pick up any book, and we're always talk about forgiveness. And until it truly means something to you, and I had that experience when I no longer felt the guilt. Um, I had had a very disruptive relationship with somebody who was really close to me, my cousin. And when he wronged our family, at that time, I had so much anger and resentment and just a rage for him. But then when he took his life, all of that anger, rage, that turned to guilt. And that turned to just, I had so much sadness. And at the same time, my daughter was just born at that time. And so I didn't know what to do with all of this. And it wasn't until a few years later, that was my turning point, was then when I could actually talk about it, when I'd gone through this forgiveness course, which was amazing, absolutely amazing. And that was when I really found out about forgiveness. And when I let that go, that was the turning point where I released that guilt that I felt. I released the rage. I didn't realize I still had that inside of me. I released that, and then I could start to understand kind of what he was going through. And that was the turning point for me, was that it wasn't about me. I could let my own feelings go, and I could start to look at what maybe he was going through. So that was and it wasn't, I could feel love for him again and not feel everything else that was like a shadow. It was like a stone that was in my heart. And so when that was gone, it was like, wow, if I could do that for him, because of him, then I could let go of so many other things. And it was like freedom. It was, I didn't feel that anymore. And it was the weirdest feeling in the world because it was like, whoa, I carried that for so long. Now it was gone and it was empty. And it was like, wow, that means love can grow again. That means joy can grow again. And that was my turning point.
Wow. My family's experienced suicide as well. And I'm sorry you've had to go through that. It's not fun.
No.
As you were talking, I was thinking about my own journey, and for so long thinking I had forgiven
Mm-hmm.
my abusers. And really what was going on is that inner child was so closed off. She couldn't even begin to process how she really felt. And it was the numbness of it that I thought was forgiveness. And I think I'm still having to work on some of that forgiveness. I'm getting better because of therapy. But have you ever experienced that or talked to someone who thought that they were in full forgiveness and then later found out, wow, they weren't?
Yes. Absolutely. It's, we sometimes convince ourselves, like, because if it doesn't hurt anymore, then we kind of think, okay, we've forgiven. But the true test of whether or not you have forgiven is when you think of that person, is there still an emotional reaction? If there is still an emotional reaction, we haven't completed the forgiveness journey. So I've had people come to me, and I had one particular lady come to me, and she was like, I'm good. I'm good. I have, I've done it all. And then when I started asking questions, and I could see the pain in her eyes, and it wasn't just pain, it was anger, and it was bitterness. And I was like, you haven't forgiven. Up here, you've forgiven. Absolutely. Up here, you've told yourself you've forgiven. But right here in your heart, you haven't forgiven, because that's where the forgiveness needs to be, is in the heart. You can tell yourself intellectually all the time. And that's part of the problem, is that we know we need to forgive. I mean, if you're a Christian, if you follow those beliefs, you're told you have to forgive, that you have to forgive. And the thing is that we can tell ourselves all the time up here, I've forgiven that person. I've forgiven that person. But or I've forgiven that situation, or I've forgiven myself for, for whichever. But if you haven't forgiven in the heart, and you still have an emotional reaction, and whether we're all going to have an emotional reaction, but if that still causes pain, if it still causes anger, and you're just like, your eyes just light up, and you're just like, and not light up for the good way, then you haven't forgiven. And so I did have to tell this wonderful lady that she hadn't, and she got angry. She got angry at me. which I was okay with because she was like, well, what do you mean I haven't forgiven? I said, take a breath. And I said, how does your body feel? And she just kind of looked at me and she goes, I haven't forgiven. And I said, yeah. And she had completely convinced herself that she had completely forgiven these people in her life. And she was surprised and stuff. She's like, wow, you can really convince yourself. And I'm like, you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you're bringing up two pieces. One is, how's your body feel? Because it took me a long time to allow myself to listen to my body. But one time when that did happen for me, when I had relocated to the Reno area, I was looking for a new church. And it was really important to me to feel accepted and welcomed, knowing, that I had been married 3 times, divorced 3 times, all to abusive men, based on, my childhood experience. So where was I going to be welcomed? And I had gone to this church and listened to this. I didn't wind up going to this church full time, but the pastor at that time was talking about forgiveness. And it was the first time ever I've heard a pastor talk about forgive doesn't mean you have to be best friends again. Because I think so many of us, especially those in the Christian faith, see that the Bible's telling us to forgive is now, forgotten and we're all good again.
Yeah.
That was a huge release for me.
Yeah.
So Juanita, when you think about forgiveness, then how do you describe that truth now versus when you were still working to forgive?
For me, at first, my definition of forgiveness was still kind of intermixed with okay, so you forgive, you move on. It's just not brought up anymore. And then it evolved into, okay, you forgive, but that doesn't mean that they get access to you. That doesn't mean you let them off the hook. That it started to become much clearer to me that the forgiveness is about you. The forgiveness is about you. It's not about them. And that's where the biggest hiccup becomes, is because forgiveness, forgiving others and it's okay and all of this and everything's wine and roses again. And it's not. Because forgiveness doesn't mean that what they did was okay. That's not what forgiveness is about. Forgiveness doesn't mean that they have full access to your life again. That is not what that means. Forgiveness is not reconciliation with them. Forgiveness is that you're creating those boundaries. And if that means that person never gets access to you again, that's okay, because it's about you. And that was what I now define for myself and for how I coach people and how I teach people, is that it's more about what forgiveness is not than what forgiveness is about you. It's forgiveness is a gift to you, because honestly, they're not thinking about you. And that was one of the is one of the stepping stones people, or the roadblocks people have, is that, well, I'll forgive them when they apologize to me. Guess what? That apology is probably never coming. Because honestly, they may not even have remembered that they're so in their own ways that they could also figure you deserved it. And that's what forgiveness is about. Because the forgiveness is that you release that pain. You heal your inner child. You heal yourself. And that's where the boundaries come from, is that person doesn't get access to you anymore. Or you don't make those same mistakes and you don't put yourself in the same situation. And so that's my definition now, is that it's all about me, baby.
That's great. It's that self-care, self-compassion, self-kindness.
Exactly. Exactly.
I have seen people carry such incredible anger towards someone that harmed them years ago. And I'm thinking in my head, you haven't talked to that person since years ago. Do you think they're really even thinking about you and you're carrying this around with you?
Hmm.
It damages your own life.
It hugely damages yourself because everything that you are looking at from the scope of your life is through that lens. It's like you're looking at life with a chip on your shoulder. You're looking at life ultra protective because it's either anger or protection. And when you meet people, you're not open to really having a relationship with them. When you go to family events, and if that person still, or even if you live in the same area, you're constantly on guard. You're constantly on guard. And think about that. Is that how you want to live? And that's kind of how I share with clients is that do you want to live on high alert? And when you run into that person, you know what? Even if you confronted them, they're probably going to look at you and go, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Hmm.
So,
Absolutely. So you've been talking about guilt and shame and regret and resentment. You've walked that road. I have walked and I'm still walking as I'm on my healing journey on that road. Um, how have you been able to release those emotions instead of keep them in? What are your practices? What are your daily things or weekly things that you do to help?
in the beginning, it was daily. In the beginning, when I first started my journey, it was daily. I would kind of go one or two methods. And it's two of the methods that I teach my clients. Is one of the things is a forgiveness letter. So I would even in the very beginning is that I would take out a piece of paper and I'd put their name at the top. And the thing is that a lot of what gets blocked is because we don't have a voice. We don't we can't say what we want to say to them. And so in the first part of the letter is that I would tell that person everything I've ever wanted to say to them. Now, I also want to point out that this is not a letter you are ever going to send to that person. This is an all about you letter. So you put their name at the top and you do this for anyone that you're feeling resentment or shame or guilt. And you know what? It's also okay to put your own name at the top because there's things that we need to forgive about ourselves too in different situations or guilt reasons, situations we wish we wouldn't have put ourselves in, or things that we blame ourselves for that we had no control over. So again, putting that name at the top, putting everything you want to say to them. And then the second part of the letter are I forgive you statements for absolutely everything. And then you do, I release. This no longer has power over me. And I no longer allow this in my life from this day forward. And then you fold up that letter. And then if you have a fire pit, or if you can go someplace that is like got running water, like a river or a lake, and fire pit is I always found the most peaceful. The fire pit, and I set it on fire and I let it burn and it's gone. And as you watch it burn, you just breathe and you just thank God that this is no longer a part of you. And the thing is that now that sounds pretty simple. It does, in the sense that it feels like it's a one and done. It's not. I really, really, really wish that I could tell you that this is a one and done thing and it's over and you never ever feel guilt or anything again. Um, Unfortunately, that is not the case. However, that first letter, you're probably going to cry and you're going to cry and cry, and don't stop those tears because that is part of the healing. And that was my journey, was that I did a letter for everything. And it was a very long process. And I basically put a lot of things that were going on in my life, I put them on hold because I knew that I needed to do this. And if you're going to try to do a full-time job and if you're a mom and you're taking care, do this very slowly because it's going to take so much out of you. And I would definitely say, like, in the very beginning, it was all consuming, but it was the greatest feeling I have ever felt in my life because literally I was taking it out of my heart and doing that. That was my first method, and it worked, and it needed to. The second method I incorporated later, and that is the one where you sit in the meditation. And if you can picture that person, because sometimes you don't want to write it all out. Sometimes you get to the point where if you can just use your imagination, sit in quiet where you'll not be disturbed, and you have a conversation with that person in your mind or like out loud, preferably out loud, because there is something about getting the words out that means so much more because it feels more real. So I'm now at the point where if something comes up like that, where I need that to do that forgiveness, that's just my go-to. And depending on where that feels inside, whether I do the letter method or whether I have that imagined conversation, it's just natural that for me now to do that. And you get to that point because at the beginning, it's going to feel like it's every day that you have to, because it could be different people, or it could be, the next morning, you still feel like there's that gunk inside of you. There's still that, write another letter or have that conversation and keep doing it until there's nothing left. And then it's like, if that person comes to mind, or you unfortunately see that person, or you hear about something and something comes up, go to that method and release it again. Because pretty soon it could take a few weeks, it could take a few months. It could be, you're going on with life and somebody mentions something about that. And it could be a few years down the road. And you know that there's still just a little bit of a pit in your stomach. Take that out. Do it again. It has worked wonders in my life. And when those little moments come up, you know what? Just do it. Because don't ruminate on it. Don't think, well, I shouldn't feel this way anymore. That creates more guilt.
Absolutely. Yeah. I find, just getting myself to journal right now, I've got so much in my past that I finally wrote the first letter to myself not too long ago.
Good for you.
And I put it as part of my YouTube video series.
Yeah.
So I read that letter to those who follow me on YouTube, and I hear it, but I haven't quite let it in yet. And that, yeah, absolutely. Practice and practice. Now, Juanita, in our last few minutes together, talk to me a little bit. loved hearing your story and your perspective from it. So now from the coaching side, when you're working with individuals, um, what message, energies, emotions come through as you're helping people find healing?
It's really interesting, because usually when people start with me, they're kind of like they're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, where it's kind of like, "You know what? I'm not really sure I really need a forgiveness coach," because and when we start talking, it's kind of like that's when some of the guilt will come out. Or oftentimes it's the anger or the bitterness that they feel. And how dare they treat me like, and so in the first couple of sessions, I just let them talk. I let them just tell me what's going on. And the thing is that towards the end of their time with me, in that first or second session, I'll be like, okay, how does your body feel? You told me at the beginning, you kind of thought you were okay. So tell me, and what do you want to release first? What is the one emotion that you would like to not carry around with you anymore? If I could wave a magic wand, and usually the first is, they'll tell me, I don't want to be angry anymore. I'm tired of being angry. And so that's usually the first emotion that comes up is the anger. Second emotion that usually comes up is sadness and guilt. Like they're so intertwined because usually the second session they come to me, if they don't try to read, and usually I will try to stop them from just retelling me everything they told me in the first session, is that I'll be like, okay, so let's dig a little deeper. And usually that's where the guilt will come in, or they'll start crying. And it's like, okay, where's this coming from? Where's this coming from? When you're talking to me, who are you? Where are you in that moment? And we'll start talking about that. And because a lot of people don't want to believe that there's really anything to forgiveness.
Mhm.
Like they just figure, okay, well, I can just say I forgive that person and bing, bang, boom, it's done. And they don't realize the deep work. And so when they start talking to me, and then usually that'll lead to like the third or fourth. And usually by the third one, that's where I'm going to that's where they're open to writing the letters. They're open to actually looking at how this is affecting their life. Because that's where we're going to go is how is this reaction? How is this emotion? How is this coloring your life? And so that begins their healing. That begins their healing. Is because once you acknowledge and you're open to forgiveness, then you're on the path to healing.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you, Juanita.
You are so welcome.
So, as we close today's episode, I invite all of you to pause and notice what stirred in you while listening to Juanita's story. Maybe there's something you've been holding, like a memory, a resentment, a weight you've been carrying for way too long. I certainly know I have loads of those that I am trying to work through and overcome and let go. So, what would it look like to begin releasing it, not for anyone's sake, but for your own freedom? And as Juanita shared, forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it does redeem it. It transforms us. The very places that once hurt are now where spaces can be filled with love and light, and we can be happy again. Juanita, thank you for being here today, for reminding us that healing isn't a destination. It's a daily act of grace for ourselves. And thank you for all of my listeners for sharing this space with us. Juanita, did you have any closing words?
One of the biggest things that I would like your listeners to take away is have grace for yourself. This is a process. This is not a sprint. This is a process. Love yourself through this journey. Take extra care and extra love for yourself.
Thank you. So until next time, may you walk gently with your story and may you find the courage to forgive, to heal, and to redeem your own life. Thank you for being here. I'm Julie M. Lane, and this is Redeeming Stories. Thanks, Juanita.
You are very welcome.